Trade Efficiency with NACFE's Mike Roth and friends.
Here in episode 64, we have joining us Andrew Bremer. He's Managing Director of DriveOhio, where we talk about the goals of the program, Ohio's importance as a transportation center, and the infrastructure needs for electric vehicles and automated vehicles. He also comments on the importance of partnerships and dialogues to make improvements, and he shares information about the US 33 Smart Mobility Corridor and the I-70 Truck Automation Corridor. Today we have joining us Andrew Bremer, the Managing Director at DriveOhio, and it's a real pleasure having you on today, Andrew. Thanks for joining us.
Well, thanks, Mike. Pleasure to be with you.
Yeah, full disclosure for everybody. I was born and raised in Ohio, proud graduate of Ohio State University, and, kind of fascinated with everything Buckeye. So talking to you, Andrew, I mean, we would have been de facto friends had we never worked together on anything. Yeah. Do you remember how DriveOhio and NACFE met, and maybe how, sort of you and I mean, I want to say it goes back, maybe even back to the Columbus Smart City work, but I couldn't really figure it all out. You got any thoughts on that?
Yeah, and I think it started with a friend of a friend. So HNTB is one of those large engineering firms, and I believe they were involved in the Smart City program as well, but back in 2016 or so. And I think we served on a couple of committees together. But I think we're even closer now because we're on part of a project together, the I-70 Smart Automation Corridor project.
Yeah, and we at NACFE, we've been around 12 or 13 years. I've been in trucking a lot longer, and we've done a lot of work with the DOE and their Clean Cities program, and some other government groups. But I gotta be honest, we don't and haven't worked really closely with the Department of Transportation or the state Department of Transportation. So, let's get right into this. Tell us about DriveOhio and how it fits in, governance and what your main goals and objectives are.
So DriveOhio is housed currently under the Ohio Department of Transportation. We are an entity that was created under executive order. So beginning in January of 2018, then Governor John Kasich, and now continued under our current governor, Mike DeWine, signed an executive order creating DriveOhio. And we're structured so that DriveOhio can pull together all of the different state agencies, such as our friends over at Department of Public Safety. They manage the Ohio Highway Patrol, the Department of Insurance, and other agencies. And so DriveOhio is that one-stop shop for Ohio to advance smart mobility. And that's involving connected and automated vehicles, whether that's on the ground or in the air, shared mobility, and electrified mobility now. And so when we talk about smart mobility, that means we're pursuing any technology that addresses safety and efficiency. And right now we have, for calendar year 2021, we have 1,244 fatalities on Ohio's roadways. So DriveOhio was created to address safety and efficiency, specifically that fatality number.
Yeah, and I think it's actually creeping up some too. I mean, we'd gone like a decade nationally of reducing highway deaths, and then it's and actually that kind of shocks me a little bit with the better reliable and durable cars we have. We got a lot of safety equipment on it, but we all know distractions and other things. So it's really important work. Is this a common sort of approach that we see in other states as well, Andrew, or is it unique to Ohio having such a entity?
Well, I like to promote Ohio anytime I can, so I'm going to do it now. I like to say that Ohio is a leader in this area. Around 2015 and 2016, there weren't a whole lot of states looking at smart mobility issues, or even in smart mobility in general. But with the advancements and the award of Smart Columbus of a US DOT grant, with another grant initiative that the state of Ohio won, we were sort of propelled into this space and looking at, where does the issue of smart mobility, where does that get addressed in state government? There really was no one agency that was well positioned to address that. Yes, it sort of lives under the Ohio Department of Transportation, and yes, it has a lot of infrastructure issues dealing with that. But you really needed a new entity to handle all of the issues that are a part of smart mobility, regulations, rules, insurance capabilities, all that kind of stuff. So I'd like to say that Ohio is a leader in this, and I think other states are starting to get the picture and to move along as well.
Yeah, we're even seeing that at the federal level. We have the joint, what they call it, the joint, where there's a group working across DOE, DOT at the federal level on some of these exact same things. And, I hear, not only we both Buckeyes, but Ohio, I mean, when you think about it and think about transportation, I mean, way back in the day, you had a Great Lake and, multiple cities on the Great Lakes that were key to transportation before we had cars and trains, and the Ohio River, for goodness sake. And then the highway bill with, 75, 71 going north and south. You got the tollway and turnpike and 80, 90, as well as 70 across the middle of the state. And like you mentioned earlier, I hadn't even thought about it till you brought it up, but, planes and trains and, Ohio has always had a big transportation need, both within the state and as you go across the state. I suppose, how do you think about that with respect to the work you do at DriveOhio?
Yeah, you covered the on the ground part pretty well. And yeah, you're right. Ohio is the heart of it all. We're within a day's drive of 60% of the US and Canadian population. So we're right in the center of everything, and we need a large infrastructure to take care of that. It's interesting to note that, we're 35th in land size, 11th in population, but we've got the 7th largest amount of vehicle miles traveled in the country, and also the 2nd largest number of bridges in the country as well. So we've got a lot of resources taking care of that infrastructure. But I think, you covered the on the ground components pretty well, but I think we're missing a little bit of our air assets. Ohio is home to 176 public use airports, 8 commercial airports. And so within DriveOhio, we also have a group that oversees unmanned aerial systems called FlyOhio, taking advantage of all that infrastructure we have in the state. FlyOhio is housed within the Dayton and Springfield area. Of course, where Flight grew up. You're familiar with Ohio, so where the Wright brothers did their research development and improving their products to do that first in flight in North Carolina. So FlyOhio is really trying to pull together those assets and develop the use cases for unmanned aerial systems, both freight and passenger. Not only transporting those goods, but also responding for emergency situations on the freeways as well. Again, all those resources, saving lives, impacting the safety numbers, all through smart mobility.
Yeah. And when I think about smart mobility, of course, we work on freight, not people movement so much, but, it's becoming a intermodal world. I don't know, maybe that's wrong. I'm not sure but transportation is becoming intermodal. We're starting to really think about, e-commerce sort of is driving some of that, but I think other things too. I mean, getting a big tractor trailer. I mean, let me step back. A tractor trailer moving goods is really efficient because it can go dock to dock. But as we keep studying at NACFE, the great tractor trailer that can do, say, 11, 12 mile per gallon on the highway has aerodynamics and gearing and ultimately other zero emission technologies on it that makes it kind of a hard truck to handle in the city or even inside any sort of beltway. So we see a movement to, long haul intermodal trucks or like a mode shift for trucking even. So we always think about that in terms of rail to truck, but maybe there's a long haul truck that drops outside of Columbus or Dayton. And then, a zero emission, more regional, more maneuverable truck moves the freight around town. So, with air and sea and ground, I mean, I think technology is also bringing this right vehicle to do the job, but that's going to require moving the freight maybe from one truck to another. I don't know, a little off the beat there, but
No,
You know,
absolutely. I agree with you, Mike. So we've got to be clear where our swim lanes are, so to speak. So, the infrastructure side, that's what Drive Ohio and the state of Ohio has control over, right? You talk about mode shifts and some of these new technologies being incorporated and how you make those mode shifts. We understand, we're leaving that to the private sector to figure out. So it's good that we have these partnerships. Uh, you know, NACFE and other private sector partners taking care of their aspects, the public infrastructure side taking care of our aspects, and then, that dialogue, that back and forth, and even the partnerships, how they go, even between contract and contract and project to project, demonstration and demonstration, that continuing mix of feedback and dialogue continuously, you know, feeds better innovation, more efficiency. If there are improvements to the infrastructure that we need to make, if there is a large modal shift with electric trucks or automated trucks or, air mobility, we should hear that at the state level from our private friends and our private partners, and we'll make those changes. It won't be immediate but over time, those improvements can be made.
Yeah. Yeah. So let's get into the infrastructure, and we'll save some time to talk about this I-70 automation project here in a few minutes. But with respect to infrastructure, you're talking about, publicly funded infrastructure, I would think. And so not only do we have to think about roads and bridges, but now we're looking at charging or hydrogen. And, our studies say that, that will start that movement will start with sort of private depot charging, much like we're seeing with cars, with, cars charged in their garages before they start to charge it out on, on public streets or in, shopping malls or this, that, and the other. We see that happening as well on trucks. But how are you approaching let's just focus on electric vehicle charging and maybe hydrogen fueling with respect to the infrastructure needs for those cars and trucks into the future?
Certainly. Well, we've been looking at the electrification of, not only the transportation system, but looking at the areas where these chargers can go. So Drive Ohio is tasked by our governor to look at those locations for charging stations. We started in 2019 with a freight electrification study. We've evolved since then to looking at passenger vehicles as well. And so we have an excellent start in the state of Ohio for receiving, federal funding, part of the build program, the infrastructure program, for receiving those federal funds to make those electrification improvements happen. So we're well positioned, we're well studied on the subject, and we're just looking for private partners to help us make it happen.
What for you in that journey of the freight study and so forth? What are some of the surprises you've had? I mean, I could guess at a couple, but why don't you share a few, and then maybe I'll ask you a follow-on question if you don't mind.
Sure. Well, being housed under the Department of Transportation, we're now moving into different areas than traditional transportation would have us move into. Taking a look at electrification and electric charging stations and their locations, taking a look at the electric grid itself and seeing the capabilities of the electric grid to support, DC fast charging, for example. That has a large energy footprint and a large energy draw to it. And just to see the number of locations that we're not able to place immediately with a DC fast charger was quite alarming. So there will be continued dialogue with our energy providers, the grid, so to speak, on those improvements, on getting to those rural areas and some of the underserved areas as well.
A couple of weeks ago, I was around DC at a meeting, and Alex Schrader, who's leading that joint office I mentioned on energy and transportation, he said something interesting. I thought it really took me back. He said, we've got these two huge systems that were developed in the United States, the grid and the highway system. And now we're asking them to work together. for electrifying transportation. And I that struck me as, wow, we got two very complex systems that we're expecting now to work together. I mean, not only do you have that, but the amount of power we need to get to charge these vehicles from that grid. Even myself, I say sometimes, well, electricity is just electricity. We can know how to scale. We ought to be able to scale that. I mean, we've been doing it forever. On the other hand, when the utility folks actually talk through how much we're talking about here, this might be a, once and forever growth in electricity needs for transportation. So, it's a marathon, not a sprint, I know, but man, it feels a little overwhelming at times.
Certainly, and I think we're well positioned to have those conversations. Those are important conversations to have. How are we going to build out this infrastructure? How is the grid going to grow and adapt to that? But also, where is the electricity going to come from?
All right, let's look at at automation a little bit. I know the governor a few years ago, even I recall a project along State Route 30, if I remember right, or 33. And some very leading stepping out. Ohio was thinking about this automation, whether it's freight or trucks, because a lot of states are looking at it and saying, oh, okay, we're going to kind of step back and watch this happen in the Southwest, Texas, New Mexico, Arizona, California. And then and then we'll figure out how to do it, because when we talk about truck automation, the weather is a big deal. But do I have that right? Ohio kind of leaned into trucking automation a number of years ago.
Absolutely. Absolutely. No, early on, we recognized that Ohio needs to be a leader in this. We've got the right infrastructure for it. And that speaks well at the state level as well as our local municipalities. They have wonderful infrastructure assets available to help the private sector develop and innovate automation solutions. But you're right, the US 33 Smart Mobility Corridor, we used that piece of infrastructure, and it's a corridor that goes from just outside central Ohio here, from Dublin through the city of Marysville up to the Transportation Research Center, another one of those great assets that we have here in Ohio that's testing automated and connected vehicles. But we leveraged US 33 to conduct an early demonstration of truck automation. And then it was the company known as Otto, OTTO, going throughout the country demonstrating the capabilities of this new thing called automated truck technology. And they claimed that the truck could do many functions that the driver does, either assist the driver or do them better. So we tasked Otto with carrying a salt brine tank from the ODOT central garage here in Columbus up to one of our county headquarters up in Bell Fountain in Logan County along US 33. And early on, that was used as a test and a demonstration, and it worked out tremendously. And I will say, unfortunately, we were a bit late in conducting that test. I think the state of Colorado got the attention grab and the headline grab when they partnered with Otto to transport a truck full of Budweiser beer. So you can imagine the headlines that, Otto transports Budweiser sounds a lot better than Otto transports salt brine. So
yeah, I remember
that. Yeah.
So that brings us to this I-70 truck automated corridor project. So what's the history and where is that project right now? I know NACV is partnering, and so we know a lot about this project, but walk our listeners through what it is and what you're trying to accomplish there.
Certainly. So the concept came to us in 2018. We were going through, just some brainstorming exercises of what's the next thing. So we've got the US 33 Smart Mobility Corridor. That project's being built currently as of 2018. We've done some demonstrations with the city of Columbus and the Smart Cities Challenge program of demonstrating passenger AV shuttles. So what's next? Well, the obvious step was, look at the freight and logistics industry in Ohio. my earlier statistics of being, 60% of the US and Canadian population, we're home to the freight and logistics industry, and it's a big player here in Ohio. So, truck automation has got to be the next step. How we do that, there has been a lot of demonstrations in the South and Southwest, as you mentioned before, Mike. And how do we get the AV tech industry to pay attention to Ohio? And to do that, grant funding is great. We've got about $4 million available to entice the tech industry to come up here to Ohio and partner with the freight and logistics industry to do this project. But, just create that incentive to get them up here, to get the industry started, to get that partnership going, and hopefully it can continue on in the future. But, another aspect of that, there may be freight carriers or drivers that are unsure of this technology. Well, another aspect of the project, though, is to partner with the Transportation Research Center, a bunch of great engineers up there, taking a look at these issues, but partner with the TRC and conduct what we're calling a road audit. And a road audit is simply, outfitting a vehicle with machine vision, because that's a lot of what these automated technology systems are, is simply just a machine vision system to take a look at the roadway. And how they see the roadway is dependent on different AV technology companies, whether they rely on LiDAR, radar, visual cameras, or a combination of all three, or possible some other information through GPS sensing and everything. But essentially just incorporate machine vision into these vehicles, run them on I-70, ensure that the infrastructure is built to the best possible standard that we can possibly build it, so that it ensures that the technology will work consistently and reliably. So there's that twofold aspect: enticing the AV industry to come up here, and also create that level of assurance that the technology is going to work consistently and reliably.
Yeah, those two aspects are exactly why we got excited about it and wanted to help you get it done. So where are we right now? I mean, I think, or I know that we've been working on helping and making it easier easy for those technology providers and the end user fleets to participate and get involved and sign up for this testing. Mm-hmm. Through just having a simple application process. But aren't we about ready to ask for proposals or responses to find those partners and get this done in 2023?
Absolutely. So we're on the verge of releasing a request for proposals, an RFP, to look for those, what we're calling deployment teams. And unfortunately, at the state level, we're not able to play matchmaker or any kind of arrangement between private sector partners. So we're looking for responses from deployment teams that consist of a fleet and logistics firm and a technology provider providing the level of technology that we're looking for, responding to that RFP and coming up with a proposal to run on I-70, involve certain levels of technology in that proposal as well, and provide us a picture of how you're going to run the technology within your daily business functions.
That RFP and will come out in the next couple of weeks. You got the time frame for it?
So the RFP will be released at the end of September here. We'll be seeking responses the end of October. We'll be evaluating responses through November, December, hopefully contracting beginning 2023, and hopefully getting trucks on the roadway by middle of 23.
That's great. So everybody out there who might want to think about responding to this, I think it's a real good opportunity. I think the team there at DriveOhio, HNTB, NACFI's part of that. I mean, they've come up with a pretty simple, straightforward way to do this RFP. And I think it's going to be less onerous or demanding than you think. So I would really encourage people to consider going and thinking about and getting involved and actually winning this proposal. But we're running out of time, Andrew. So, from your kind of chair, as we think about electric infrastructure, congestion, safety, efficiency, automation, and knowing that a lot of our audience are, really maybe new to trucking, or folks who are really engaged in a kind of a transformation on trucking, really an old, pretty established industry. What's your advice? I mean, how do we go about this in a way that when we look back on it, we say, that was maybe easier than we thought?
Mhm. I'd say just remain engaged and continue to have those conversations with, other drivers, your employers about the possibilities of truck automation. I think when this whole new world of automation was first introduced to us back in 2015, 2016, everybody had a pretty visceral reaction, whether, hey, this is great, or this is really going to threaten my way of living and I'm going to be replaced by a machine. So we have a bit of maturity after that. It's been 7 years since all this came out. And I think we've learned a lot by just being engaged and continuing that conversation. So I urge your members to just remain engaged, have those conversations, let us know how we're doing and what we can improve upon, and just be upfront, open, and honest.
Well, great. That's good advice, Andrew. And so thanks so much for joining me. It's so interesting to talk about these topics, and really it's also interesting to have somebody like you that's really on the ground there, close to the roadways, to the truckers, to the reality of all this. So thanks for joining us.
Thank you, Mike. My pleasure.
Freight Efficiency with NACFE's Mike Roth and Friends.